Hello, my name is Zachariah. Welcome to another episode of Let's Start With Their Name, the show where I interview a tabletop role-playing game player about a character that might be interesting, famous, infamous, many different things. Today I am really excited to have a friend of mine. Just so you guys know, this guy was the original partner on Axiom Games LLC and helped me get Single Mod out the door, as well as Upper Hand and Getting Over. My long-term buddy, Mark, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's good to be here.
I'm really excited to have you here, man. We have been playing role-playing games together probably the longest of all the people that I have interviewed to date.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, probably. It's been a minimum 25 years.
Yes. And that's a light minimum. I would definitely estimate closer to 30 or above.
Probably.
So we have a long history together. So I'm very excited to do this with you. But like I said, I have asked you previously to come up with a character that you want to talk about today. I don't know what that character is, but I actually know what that character is because I know Mark really well, so I know who he's going to choose. So without further ado, let's start with their name.
All right. The character name is Scorn Mandark.
Scorn
Classic.
Mandark. And my first big question, what game is Scorn Mandark from?
So Scorn Mandark was one of the original characters in Badass Metal. For anyone who has not heard of that before, Badass Metal was our sort of reinvention of the Mechton Zeta role-playing game that we played previously to that. And it's got giant robots, sort of anime style. There's a pretty heavy focus on giant robots, let's be fair.
Yeah. Very mecha. Very mecha.
Yeah, very, very mecha. There's some out of mecha stuff too, but primarily, mecha focused.
It was a homebrew that I did many years ago because Mechton was too slow and not violent enough for my younger, much more blood-crazed game master ways.
There's a critical strike chart that was two-thirds of the rolls were you're just dead.
Yes.
And Zach decided that wasn't violent enough. So he fixed that. That was one of the first things he fixed.
I think there was like 4 options that you could roll and not die.
Yes.
I
was very well acquainted with those.
My thought process when making that game was if a mecha hits another mecha, it shouldn't take a long time. Like, if a person hits a mecha, it should be impossible. But if a mecha hits another mecha, it should be like paper. So it became like paper. It was really easy to kill anything in that game, period. Yes. It had the highest turnover rate of player characters, without a doubt, which, if I might say so, may be why you picked Scorn Mandark, because before we get into Mark's opinions and thoughts on Scorn Mandark, I'm going to say mine on Scorn Mandark real quick, because you have decided to pick this character. When I made this game was all about just like, because almost all of our friends lived really far away, so we never knew when we were playing. We never knew who we were playing with. So my thought process was live or die by the table, maybe come back with a character, maybe not. So the game it is, to date, the most severe game I've ever written, ever. In its original iteration, it definitely got nicer as we did newer versions of it, but
a little.
The original was rough. The original was like, oh, you got hit, you're dead. You're very dead.
Very, very dead. It was rough.
Never intended for that game to have an overarching story, an overarching plot, an overarching anything. Yeah. And Mark survived. Scorn survived at least 3 critical strike chart rolls. Yes, I know the full count was 7, was 6, but it was at 3 that I was like, okay, the game's just based off him now. He ended up Like, you brute forced your way into being the main character of the entirety of that game.
And the really funny thing was that was not at all like the intention. I was just the only one who survived.
Yes, constantly. It
was sort of by default, I guess.
So, let's go ahead and get into the actual meat and potatoes of the interview. Let's hear Scorn Mandark's backstory. That's where we start. Who is Scorn Mandark in the confines of the world?
So we probably need just a little bit of world building.
Yes.
To sort of frame this, give it a little context, right? So the game of Badass Metal was a direct sequel, separated by quite some time, from our original Mechton Zeta game.
Yes.
The Mechton Zeta game was based in the idea that there were some campaigns in the books that got kind of adapted to what we were playing, but it's a bit of that trope of, you know, this menacing kind of clone, super high-tech space army invades Earth. Earth is like, oh crap, we got nothing, and gets steamrolled. And then over time kind of builds up their own robots to fight the enemy robots. And eventually through human ingenuity and grit, you know, we kick them out and they go running or whatever. And that was more or less the original story. I played some different characters in that story. But when we started Badass Metal, you know, we had the option of either playing, you know, humans or the Imperium, who were the original, you know, baddies of that first game. And there's some other factions.
There's Space Knights, playable bugs. Yeah. We had playable mecha that were just alive. Yeah, the Space Samurai. Yeah, I went a little crazy with the world building after the first one.
Oh, it was fantastic. Mm-hmm. Oh, it was so good. There was so much color in the world, which I just it was the kind of thing that as a player I loved, because the world building was there and we could explore it just kind of as we went, not in a like, let's go to this place to learn about this history thing, right. More like why is this happening? Oh, okay, that's actually really cool because it tied into this thing that happened like 700 years ago.
Yeah, it was crazy. When we actually sat down to do a timeline, when we were talking about doing a newer version of it, it was like, I feel like it was like 40,000 years of history that we like wrote out events for. It was crazy.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, it focused in on a few points, but yeah, it was a really long time.
Yeah.
So Scorn, okay, he was an Imperium pilot. We all started as, you know, level 1. We call them rookies, right? Intro characters, but he was an ace. His specialty was that he was an ace pilot. He could pilot any kind of robot, and he got bonuses for being awesome while he was doing it, basically. His sort of hook, right, was that the Imperium was broken up into several kind of clans. I have another call from you right now.
That's confusing.
That is very confusing. All right, I'll ignore that.
It's definitely not me.
Okay, well that's weird. So there, you know, several clans, and at the end of the Mechton game, the Mandark clan have been in charge of the Imperium, but by the time that Badass Metal started, the Kandrax clan was now in charge, and so at the beginning, his basic motivation and backstory was a bit of that sort of Char Aznable, like, you know, my family was supposed to run this, but these other guys took over, and I'm mad about that, and I want to fix that. And so his whole goal was he wanted to overthrow the Kandrax and instill the Mandarks again. He was not the leader of the Mandarks. He was not the leader of their clan, but he felt like their clan should be in charge because they were in charge before.
Yep.
And so that was his sort of whole thing.
His motivation.
That's basically his entire motivation was, you know, revenge and political machinations, which he had, I will point out, and it came up repeatedly, 0, and I mean 0 talented.
This is definitely true.
No.
He definitely caused
whatsoever.
more chaos in those departments than other places.
Yeah.
One thing that's really interesting is that is literally his backstory, but at the same time, you played this character on and off for like 15 plus years, I want to say. So like the idea that like so much happens to him, which is why I'm really your interview is unique in the fact that like I do not know of the people who decided to get interviewed with characters that I had game mastered or been present for. You have so many things to pick from. I don't know with the other questions what you're going to choose to put in those spots. He led revolutions on different planets. He started an entire civil war between his people. Just going over the Cribs notes, because this is a 40-minute show, he started a civil war between his entire people. He ended wars between other people. He died after he tried to literally go to war with the entire universe. He didn't die, though. They got him from where he was not dead, brought him back in to go to war with the literal entire universe. It was quite an overarching, crazy story when it comes to him. We got to move on to the next question, which is, what was your motivation for making this character? Like, when the time, if you can remember back that far, what was going through your head when you were like, I'm going to create Scorn Mandark? Where did he come from? What was your obviously there's a little inspiration from Char, but like, where were you pulling him from?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. It's actually, we say Char as Gundam fans, and he's sort of the face of Zeon and sort of the bad guys.
Yeah.
But then he's also this really sympathetic character.
Mm-hmm.
He's to me, he's actually pulled from a different Gundam show, Gundam 0080, and Anavel Gato, who is another. He's a not the leader. Right, again, some parallels here. Not the leader of these Zeon bad guy remnants, but he is sort of the ace pilot. He's a bit of a figurehead, and he has a goal to seek revenge. But his revenge, even if it worked, and it got kind of messed up in the show, even if it worked, it wouldn't have really delivered any lasting political change. It just would have killed a lot of people because he was really mad about it, right? And part of that succeeded, right? He did slaughter thousands and thousands and thousands of people, but in the end, not only did his attempt at regime change not work, it wouldn't have worked even if it did work. Even if it had succeeded, it wouldn't have actually worked the way he wanted it to. And I thought that was a both really fun, like meaty kind of character. What's the word?
Archetype?
Motivation. That's
motivation.
Motivation. Yeah. There we go. Yeah, really cool character motivation. Kind of a good archetype. There's a lot of all the easy clip art kind of pictures I made of Scorn Mandark were all pretty much based on Gato. That kind of long silvery hair, tall and thin and angular and just really intense. Like one of his primary character attributes, if we'd come up with those at the beginning, was intense. Like really intense.
He was. And the other thing too was like, we traditionally. And I don't want to speak for everybody, but certainly in our group, up to that point, we had very traditionally focused a lot on sort of typical hero characters, where you're the good guys, you're defending your planet, you don't like killing unarmed people, you let them live, even if they're going to come fight another day, and that kind of stuff. And it felt to me, being part of the Imperium, who weren't really the bad guys anymore, but not necessarily good people. Right. Yeah. It gave the opportunity to be less altruistic, less virtuous, and more pragmatic. And I thought that was just going to be a tremendously fun character to play.
And it turns out I was right.
Yeah, he was very interesting. One of the things that I always kind of loved about Scorn and what he ended up doing is he ended up kind of just his survival and his machinations, which ended up being well above what he should have been going for. Whether or not he accomplished them or not,
Yes.
they were well above like his stature. It switched all of the like light. It forced me, like the Imperium when we first made them were just this clone militaristic society that like stormed in and they were the bad guys. Yeah, right. Zentradi, they were bad guys. They were bad guys. They were bad military society. They were doing everything wrong. And then it forced you to be like, okay, so we have to make this character sympathetic because he's the character. And it forced us to kind of like look at the Imperium in a new light, in a different way. And it's actually like inspired all the writing on them since then. When we went back to it, even the fact that they were kind of like the sympathetic characters, even in the beginning, all the way back when you look at like the first mechs back in the day, and like it definitely created this like made them more human. It humanized them when you focus on them in a civil war about their last name. Like that's literally the entire like you literally started a war because there was a guy on a throne that had a different last name than you. Like that was the entirety. And like I had like my mission was like, how is this a good thing? And like it wasn't a good thing, but it was still not
at all.
Right, but it still allowed people to kind of look at it and go, oh, well, I see why they're doing this. Yeah, Scorn was a very interesting chaos goblin in a lot of ways, and I still love him for that. So my next question as we move forward through this is a big one. I feel like we're going to spend a lot of time on this one, and I think that we're going to spend multiple. You're going to have multiples because this was such a long-winded character, but what was Scorn Mandark's moment? For you, what was his moment? This can be an in-character RP thing. This can be a big combat session. This can just be the fact that you survived that fucking chart so many times. It could also be like the way you built him. Whatever you think it is, what is Scorn Mandark's moment? I can think of like 6 off the top of my head that I would mention here, which is why I'm interested in what the first one that comes to your head is.
So the first one that comes to my head, and it might not be the first chronologically in terms of the game, but it's definitely one of the first one. And it was during the first season, if you want to call it that, right? The first sort of chunk of the game. And by that I mean I break Scorn's story into sort of 4 broad sections, we'll call it, right? There's the introductory section which leads up to and to the end of the Imperium Civil War. Right, where he starts to the end of the Civil War. Then there's the post-war up through Scorn going into hiding. Because he ended up hiding with...
He didn't get hiding. I just want to point out, he did not end up... Oh, no, he did hide with the Caloran. I forgot about that. Oh, Jesus Christ.
It was
I thought you were talking about the battle for the Megumi. I thought that's what you were talking about. No. I was like, no, there was a hiding session. I forgot about that.
Yeah. No, so then there's the Caloran up through the Battle of Megumi, and to me that's all kind of one extended arc. There was kind of a half game that I don't think they had me at least, and then there was sort of the movie session, the big cinematic throwdown.
Well, we redid the Rodan stuff as a movie later, if I recall correctly, because it was the kind of like unfinished, we skipped off it sort of thing, so we went back to it at some point, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. But then there's this period of time that, for Scorn at least, nothing happened. He was literally in hiding on a planet, but in terms of his story, He's literally just there for, I don't know, was it 15 years, 20 years, something like that? He was just...
We're talking about
living
Megumi,
alone
right?
on an entire planet. Yeah, on Megumi.
Like,
This
just
irradiated wasteland of a planet.
just because I can't let this go. Megumi was a solo, a completely outer rim sort of planet. Scorn goes there because Scorn has upset so many planets of the galaxy at this point, even his own people, that he can't go home, and he's just trying. He's like, I'm just gonna build my own kingdom. He goes to Megumi. Yep. He learns how to fly their ridiculous mecha, and then he goes. Ridiculous. And then the entire galaxy is like, we've had enough of Scorn Mandark. That's where he is. He convinces Megumi to fight with him, and literally the planet gets bombarded. In the course of that gigantic, insane fight, Scorn appears to die. Like, he appears to, like, get hit and crash through the atmosphere of this planet that has been planetarily bombarded. And we made the final roll, and yet again, Scorn Mandark survived it somehow. So... then there was, he just lived on this apocalypse planet for 15 years.
Yeah, just having seen the new Star Wars movie just makes you think of like Luke, right?
Yeah,
this crazy old hermit drinking like, milk from irradiated cows or something, just surviving and just being kind of grumpy about it the whole time.
Right.
It's kind of grumpy. But then.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So, but in terms of his actual like story, for him, things were happening in the universe around him, but he was out of it, just zero contact. And then his fourth arc was the Absolution arc, where there was new players, new factions, and all these other kind of things, and he got sort of yanked out of it and brought back. I chose to stop playing him after that. He didn't. Spoiler alert: he did not die. Still, at the end of that, but it felt like the stakes would have had to have gotten so high after that for him as a character. It was like, this seems like it's getting a little much. Like to play in the game, we started having characters start like, out of 20 levels.
Your level 10
or 15, just to survive,
just to be there. Yep.
Yeah, just to be part of it. And I was like, it'd be nice to sort of start like a new campaign thing, and we started like 2 sessions. That was it. But, so for me, in the first arc, his primary defining moment in that arc, right, was a duel with the leader of the Empire of the Red Star faction.
Oh. Okay.
Where
I do remember
this. So there was a duel, and they had this dueling sphere to keep everybody out of it. But he was better than Scorn was in terms of his stats and his level.
Oh, I remember this. Oh, this is the kind of stuff.
And it leads into the next part. It leads into the next part, right? So we had this crazy duel, and I had Nick, your brother. His character was a sniper, and we developed this special bullet that can pierce the force field, and he managed to land a shot on the other guy, and broke his weapon, and that helped me win the duel.
Yeah, you cheated.
And so everybody right then was just like, "Wait, you what? You developed a technology specifically to violate our honorable dueling system field?" And I was like, "Yes, I did." But he's dead, so what of it, right? And then the Empire of the Red Starships were like, "Okay, well, we will stand down. You're going to go land on this planet. We promise not to fire upon you till we get a new, leader to come in because you won and all those other things." And I was like, "Okay, cool, awesome, appreciate that." And we shut down comms. And then my commander was like, "All right, should we make planetfall?" I said, "No."
Oh, I remember this.
I said, shoot them. I said, "Shoot them down."
Yes.
And I had my fleet shoot down an entire armada of most of the Empire of the Red Stars, starships and mecha and all these other things, to which everybody at the table, including you, if I recall, was abjectly horrified.
I was. I will 100% acquiesce to that.
What?
I was like, what?
You said you what?
I'm sitting there like trying to humanize you, and you literally do genocide, like in a session.
No, no, he is not a human. He is a pragmatist. And everybody's like, "What the fuck did you do that for?" And I was like, "Well, they said they wouldn't shoot me, but if I was me, I would shoot them, so I did." And I was just like, I don't even what. And it was like, for me, it's a really defining moment for Scorn because he's not a good guy.
No.
He is a main character. He is a protagonist. But he is not a good guy.
No.
And he never was.
No.
You know?
It's interesting, too. That point leads to everything that happened at Megumi. Because from that point on, the Red Sun, they're one and only... Like, if I recall correctly, and stop me if I'm wrong, it is because of that once you win the war, your own people won't accept you. It is because of that the Red Sun hunts you at Megumi and that entire battle even happens. It is because of that like Scorn never gets a moment of peace from that point on, if I recall correctly.
Never. And you know, it was interesting too because it at that point in the story, you know, we'd gone from little skirmishes and little fights with little patrols here and there to, you know, these large-scale spaceship battles, which the system wasn't designed to handle.
No. So I was punching above my weight class, for sure.
It was mostly cinematic, but we had, like, you know, tactics, skills, and these other things that we used to make rolls to make it sort of make sense in the story that we were kind of trying to tell. You know, but it took the Empire of the Red Star completely out of the equation, basically, for the rest of that season, right? That story arc. And then, you know, he went on to then win the war, and he claimed the throne, and all these other things. And then at the end, right, you know, the final shot from that season to me, basically, is, you know, he dueled the leader of the Kandrax clan and slew him in single combat, and he's covered in blood and takes the crown and sits on the throne.
Yeah.
Like, this fucking, you know. But then he gives it to the leader of the Mandark clan. He doesn't keep it for himself. He was never doing it to be the leader himself, right? He was doing it to promote his own family. And then his own family was like, "You gotta go." Yeah,
that's what's funny. He could have had the throne and been fine, but he's like, "No, I don't want to be the leader. I just wanted our name back on top." So they're like, "Okay, you're a criminal, and to make peace, you need to get the fuck out of here."
Right. You've got bounties that cost entire solar systems worth of economies on your head. Like that's the level of criminal that this faction wants you dead for.
Yes.
It was such. I couldn't. By that point, I've been playing it for
a while.
Months, a while, and I'd really sort of gotten his character kind of really formed in my head by that point, and I was like, "This is it. This is that moment right now that defines Scorn separately from literally everybody else, even at the table." Right?
Yeah.
I mean, we'd had other characters who'd gotten swept up and caught up in my thing and were working for me and helping me and allying with me, whether it was to, you know, get back at the Imperiums in general, because they were like, well, you're going to fight the Civil War, and by the time you're done, no matter who wins, you guys are fucked.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to have anybody left, right?
It was, and, it definitely planted your flag in a unwavering determination to win at all costs for Scorn.
Right.
Like... That was his character. I can't disagree with that at all. Every other awesome moment he has definitely comes from that, like, oh, no. Once Scorn starts, you have to kill him, and that is very hard to do.
There's literally no stopping. Yeah. You cannot stop this train. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, it is funny, too. Like, the whole Absolution storyline... Just to quickly do the crib notes with everybody is after the whole Battle Megumi and Scorn is presumed dead and everybody's happy, 15 years pass, and basically this whole like group of evil whatever starts to claim nations. It started in the Holy in the Knights, if I recall correctly, and they basically just start like, hey, the entire quadrant has to be us, period. And so they start taking over everybody.
Join or die.
Yeah, and the only way to stop them is to find somebody who cannot be stopped And so, like, somebody knows that Scorn is still alive, and they go get him. And, like...
They have to find him and all this stuff, yeah.
It's so interesting because he was, like, just the worst possible thing in the entire universe, all the way up until the end. Like, potentially misunderstood in a lot of ways, but overall, like...
Sure.
The entire... By the end, you had caused a civil war everywhere you had been. Often for the right reasons. Yeah. Often for the right reasons, but definitely everywhere you had been. The whole Macrite Rodan thing, and then you get kicked off that planet. Then the Holy Interstellar Kingdom thing, and you get kicked off that planet. And then you end up this final stand at Magume. And it's funny that they then had to, okay, well, we got to go get the worst person ever to go fight this evil. And it was...
we need a monster to fight the monster.
Yeah. It was really cool, like, turnaround to have him be, like, the righteous one towards the end,
right?
In my opinion.
Yeah.
All the way, especially since, if I recall correctly, the last fight, the big final battle for Scorn, was with Colin Backwater, which was this Earth character that had been off and on rival friends with Scorn the entire time, and he had picked the other side. Yeah. So it was like he was the virtuous one, the absolute virtue through the entire... Like, if you look at Scorn's story, he's the virtue through the entire... He's the friend who's like, hey, man, maybe you're doing this wrong, you know? And, like...
Right, yeah.
And then in the end...
Sure?
Right.
That's a lot.
And then in the end, it's Scorn versus... And I had to break so many systems for you guys to even fight because you were both so broken, but like the pluses and everything. I literally made his mech the superpower of his mech, because at this point everybody's in superpower mechs. Like, they don't even have normal mechs. They have mechs that like defy reality. His superpower mech is it controls other mechs, because Scorn's mech gets like 30 attacks. So it's just it's like a DBZ fight in mechs.
I literally need a swarm, like in Gundam. There's like these bits and funnels that are like little guns that kind of fly around, but instead of bits and guns, it's literally whole other mechs, because that's the only way it'll work.
Yeah. All right.
Oh man.
So we're approaching the end of the show. This has been really fun to talk about this. I know, it's 33 minutes. We're already there. It's a nice, easy show. That's why I like doing it. We have one final question. And this is the hardest question universally for everybody so far. And that is, what is your biggest regret with Scorn Mandark? This can be a player thing, a statistic thing. It could be a role-play moment, a combat moment. It can be anything you want. There are no wrong answers to any of these questions. But what was your biggest regret playing Scorn Mandark? And just because I could see it on your face, everybody who has done this interview have been like, oh, that's the hardest one.
It's not hard in terms of finding something that I regretted.
Right.
There are lots of those. There
were definitely a lot of sessions where the session was over and you were like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
yeah, there are a few of those. Man, it's
tough.
So I guess predicated on the idea that we will probably revisit this character at some point.
Who knows? He's unkillable.
Maybe. Not in terms of playing him, but in terms of talking about him again.
Okay, fair enough.
I think what I want to do is maybe sort of confine it to the first arc, right?
That's fair. I mean, in fairness, we could do a multi-season podcast just on Scorn Mandark's career. With the amount we've played it. I'm not kidding, everybody out there. This character was played off and on for 15 to 20 years.
And, we really, it would end up being a series podcast about the world of badass metal.
Yeah, really would be.
And, like Scorn and the things that happened in and around and with Scorn would be probably about half of the episodes. Because there's a lot of other stuff that didn't have Scorn in it.
Yeah.
Right? But there was a lot. But in the introduction for Scorn, in his sort of introduction to the world, to the idea of leading a rebellion and all of those kinds of things, one of the things I genuinely regret not taking the opportunity to do was spend more time sort of building the characters of the I don't want to say support staff, but like there were other characters who were recurring characters, part of a squad, things like that, and we spent a little time kind of delving into them, getting into their backstory, things like that. But like looking back at it, I think taking a few extra sessions to sort of build out the social structure of the people around him and really getting into some of their backstories and some of their goals and dreams and hopes and characterization, I think would have been actually really interesting. One of the things I enjoyed the most about a different character we'll talk about at some point, I'm sure, was the Womanizer's Guide to Axiom.
Yeah.
Different title for algorithm purposes, but one of the things one of the things I really liked about that game was that partly because it was text-based, it was all online, and it was sort of posting back and forth. Was we could just spend the time to just talk to somebody and have an extended conversation and sort of explore the world through the experiences and eyes of other characters, which I think would have been a lot of fun to do had I not been quite so eager to go get into mecha blow stuff up, which is I think fair. But
yeah,
I think at the beginning of the game, certainly at later games, I think we spent more time on it. Sort of in general, we had a lot more focus on maybe a smaller cast, but the first game, I think having a little bit more build out of characters involved in the story, I think would have been fun, would have been nice to do. But
I think that's a great regret. In fairness, if I have any regret with the Badass Metal system, it is that I have learned now is that while severity, I think, lacks in role-playing games a lot, that real fear. So all my games have a level of severity to them. They always will. But, like, Badass Metal was, like literally, we would have you and 1 to 5 other players, and maybe 2 of the other ones would survive, and you. And, like, it's hard to build those side characters when they're just, like, constantly getting killed or right. Dying or blowing up, and the game was very severe. It's one of the reasons that every time we go back to Badass Metal, I tend to tone it down just a tad. Like, okay, it's not as bad a critical hit chart. It is not as bad. Maybe there's a saving throw in here somewhere, just because we got we got such better stories. Well, even when we were doing the guest book stuff, we got such better stories when the characters were able to get to their full arcs and finish, even
if they die at the climax of that, they had a chance to get there. But yeah, so I see what you're saying. I think a little bit of that is the fault of the game itself that we were playing at the time. Sure. But yeah, Scorn Mandark was a lot of fun. I'm really happy that you came on to talk about this, man. I really appreciate this. We'll definitely have you on again in the future. We could talk about Scorn or Titus or any other character. Titus!
Yeah, we gotta talk about Titus. Curden's good too! Curden. Oh, Conan the Curden. Curden the Conan.
What's his story? Conan.
Hey, he stabs things. But yeah, is there anything you'd like to... I know you're not super active anywhere. Is there anything you'd like to plug, since it is a podcast and I am legally required to give you space to plug?
Not really. I will say that I do 3D digital modeling of giant robot stuff.
Yes.
And my store, my business identity is Scorn's Mecha Warehouse.
Nice.
Scorn's Mecha Repository. I'm sorry. So yeah, it's pretty much if you're looking for me on Discord or any of those kinds of things, if you find Scorn Mandark, that's probably me. Or if you're looking for me, it's probably Scorn Mandark.
All right, well there you guys go. Check out Scorn's Mecha Warehouse, and thank you again, Mark, for being on. As far as I am concerned, this was a great chat. I am doing this show on behalf of WizardsRespite.com, so check out all things TTRPG on Wizards Respite, as well as all the actual plays and podcasts that I do in TTRPG land is also through there, and you can get a bunch of wonderful merchandise and a lot of really fun, cool, interesting stat stories and stuff. Other than that, you can reach me personally at Old Man Gaming DH on Facebook. You can check me out at Old Man Gaming 9 on X. You can also check me out on the Blue Sky. I think I'm Axiom Games LLC / Old Man Gaming, but they have really long addresses. It's hard to memorize those ones, so just find me on Blue Sky. And then other than that, as long as you guys keep watching and listening, we'll keep making them, and we'll see you guys on the next character.